Alright, problem 4b. We want to, again, do the same thing as the last one. We want to sketch this and we want to identify all of the appropriate information. So to do that, we need to factor. So let's factor our numerator. Notice they both have a 6 in common. They also both have an x squared in common. So I'm going to pull out a 6x squared, and that is going to be multiplied by an x plus 2. Because x times 6x squared is 6x cubed, and 2 times 6x squared is 12x squared. So that's my numerator. Now let's factor that denominator. But before I do, I'm going to do this. I'm going to pull that negative out and give myself an x squared minus x minus 6. And now I can factor that. I'm just going to throw my negative in the numerator right there. And in the denominator, I will have x, that is going to factor as minus 3 times x plus 2, and then we have that factor of x plus 1 there, and that's equal to y. And notice that I have an x plus 2 in the numerator and an x plus 2 in the denominator, so that's going to give me a whole at x equals negative 2. I am going to have a 0 at x equals 0 because of the 6x cubed, or the 6x squared up there. That x squared gives me the 0. And then I'm going to have two vertical asymptotes. One of them is going to be at positive 3, and the other one is going to be at negative 1. And now we also want to think about the horizontal asymptote of this function. And that is going to happen, again, if you think at really big x values, we're essentially going to have 6x cubed over, or negative 6x cubed over x cubed. So negative 6x cubed over x cubed. I'm just going from that, and then I'm thinking about that negative. I pulled it up there, and then I'm taking that x and multiplying it by that x squared to get my x cubed, because it's really going to be the only going to be the highest degrees that affect us here. And so I'm going to have a horizontal asymptote at y equals negative 6. So let's piece all this together now and see what happens. I'll do my whole last, and I have a 0 at x equals 0. Vertical asymptotes at x equals 1, 2, positive 3. So I'm going to mark that in. And 1 at negative 1. And down as well. And I have my horizontal asymptote at, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, going across there. So I'm actually going to grab this whole thing and move it down a little bit so we can sketch this a little bit better, because now I can extend these lines and we can get a better shape to our graph. So again, let's see how this behaves. Already looking at it, it looks like there's going to be 3 pieces to this function. So how do we know how it looks? Well, one way you could do that is to think about a point all the way to the left or all the way to the right. That's what I prefer to do. I pick one of those and start. And I look between all my important pieces, so between my asymptotes and my zeros, and then the other asymptotes. So, look to the left first. Where are we going to be? Well, I know I have that 0 in the middle there. And let's do what I said. Let's test a point over in this area over here, figure out if we are positive or negative. So let's check the point negative 2, for example. So in my denominator, negative 2 minus 3 is negative. Negative 2 plus 1 is also negative. So negative times a negative gives me a positive denominator. So I'm dealing with positive denominator. And my numerator, well, I'm at negative 2. My first bit's going to be squared, so that's going to be positive. And then I have a negative there. So this whole first side has to be negative, so I can sketch that in. Alright, so did you notice what mistake I made? I was staring at this trying to figure out what I did wrong, and then I realized that I put my asymptote at my horizontal asymptote I put at positive 6, instead of negative 6. So let's go ahead and try this again. Sorry about that. So instead of being positive 6, I'll be at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, negative 6, like that. And now things should actually work, which is terrific. So let's use what I said a moment ago. I should be negative in this side, and so that tells me that I have to be on this branch down here, curving over and down like that, and leveling out to my horizontal asymptote of negative 6. And then in that middle branch, I am going to have to be coming down like this, and I'm going to actually bounce and turn back up. And I know I'm bouncing and turning back up because the multiplicity of that 0 was 2. It was x squared. So I know I have to end up with something that looks a little bit like that. And then finally, the last piece I need to do is I need to sketch this bottom section in, leveling off to that horizontal asymptote. And again, I can't be up here because I don't have any zeros there, and that's the same reason that that couldn't be up there because there are no zeros there. So this should be my final sketch.